As I
Hello.
pointed out, as we pointed out like long ago, Darren's last episode was just that, his last episode. So we kind of like ended strong. And it's just back to the both of us for probably, hopefully, not for the time being but if there happens to be a third co-host that happens to come around here, that would be grateful. But otherwise, this is the both of us. So you have to deal with the pair of us for until we decide to actually end the show, which is probably going to be uh, never. No, until
We'll do this for Beyond the Grave.
yes. No, actually, I think the only time we actually will end the show is if one YouTube decides to get is so screwy in terms of like uploading content,
Hmm.
or I just can't figure out a way to I just literally can't figure out a way to upload the show without trying to go crazy. So yeah, we're here for a while. And speaking of things that have been here for a while, remember how I mentioned in the last episode I want to talk more about Broadway? Well, sure enough, during the holidays, a couple of Broadway tidbits actually came out. And the first tidbit is the musical Funny Girl actually broke the box office record at the August Wilson Theater in Manhattan. Uh, so obviously, Funny Girl has been in the Broadway news for the past year or so. There's a lot of things we could talk about, but a lot of things about people who already know what's happening. But basically, the brass tacks of it, thanks to the holidays of 2022, specifically the Christmas week, I believe. Yeah, the Broadway box office surged along the holiday ticket prices. Funny Girl, Beetlejuice was which just ended, by the way. Six, among other shows, smashing box office records in Broadway. Apparently, Lion King managed to take over $4.3 million in the box office in terms of just uh, just the thing. But what was interesting is that Funny Girl essentially set the new box office record at the August Wilson Theater, grossing over more than $2.4 million over a nine-performance week. The last time that happened for the August Wilson Theater was, I believe, was Mean Girls. Like Mean Girls was so successful that it like held the box office record there for like, well, obviously for years because yeah, it was, I think, Mean Girls. And then here is not only Funny Girl, which is basically a oh, okay. Also of note, speaking of August Wilson, um, this actually was interested the piano lesson, which I believe is still on Broadway, which might still be on Broadway as a recording. I'm not sure. Oh no, actually, yeah, it is. It's still on Broadway. It's been extended to January 29th.
Hmm.
So the piano lesson stars Samuel L. Jackson, John David Washington. It is now the highest grossing August Wilson play ever to be performed on Broadway.
Hmm.
So it has grossed more than $1.1 million over this Christmas break. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, so there's other things that were kind of interesting to read. So the highest grossing of that Christmas week was obviously Lion King. Apparently, it has now an amazing new house record of $4.3 million, which is an overall Broadway record. Uh, yeah, they even said the average price is like 285 to go see the Lion King. To say that, the Music Man made over $3.9 million, and then you have the Phantom of the Opera and then Wicked. But back to Funny Girl, I think Funny Girl, I think with Funny Girl, it is something that it's one of those plays that for some reason attracts a lot of people because it's about a it's practically about Broadway, about acting and whatnot. And I think people were more uh intrigued to see how Leah Michelle was, specifically because of the situation that how she got onto the show in the first place, which, obviously we could get into a whole thing about that, but that's like it doesn't really have to be said. But it, I think it actually also feels a lot more suitable, I guess, for a revival of a famous musical to essentially dethrone the musicals, the Mean Girls musical for the most part, because you have it's almost like it's almost like a what's the term a comparison between new versus old and on Broadway. If it's an old product, right? Say like the Music Man or Funny Girl, they seem to do obviously well, even with the people who are like obviously performing in that. Like the Music Man had Hugh Jackman for us at least maybe what was it maybe 3 months I think maybe 4 months going practically half of a year. For Funny Girl, you have Leah Michelle, who obviously is a successful Broadway actress who's come from Broadway, TV, all that stuff, has a league of fans who talk about that. But then you have something like, say, Mean Girls, which was essentially a musical based off a comedy that didn't feel like it would become a musical because it became um, sort of like it came out of the ashes of like films that became musicals that somehow became hits, like The Producers, Young Frankenstein, um, Some Like It Hot, like films that don't seem like musicals that just become musicals. What I'm seeing is the old, or rather the revivalists of Broadway, is what is keeping people wanting to go see these shows in the first place, as opposed to newer shows that seem to be struggling more and more. And I've been noticing that in some of the ticket sales. Is like even though these ticket sales were doing good, the they're obviously not getting they're obviously not getting like over 1.5, I would say $1.5 million. And these are like and these are obviously top ticketing Broadway shows. So yes, it's definitely interesting to look at from a business standpoint and go, oh, of course, obviously after the holidays or even the holiday season, that's when the ticketing season would be more expensive, right? But then it's like at the same time, it's obviously the older shows that are more popular rather than going to see a newer show. But that's just me.
Yeah, I
Hayden,
don't
do you
have much
have
to say
any?
about I just don't have much to say about that show. I'm just not as familiar with it. Like
Yeah,
I've heard good things about it, and that's just awesome that like it, made 2.4 million, right?
yeah, 2.5 million and broke the box office record at the August Wilson Theater. So it's like, although I do think maybe from what I'm looking at, musicals on Broadway seem to be people seem to flock towards musicals more so than they do
Mhm.
theatrical plays.
Oh yeah, I mean that's always kind of been the case. Like that's why these big theatrical plays always have to try and grab like whoever a big name star is because that's the only way they can really compete with the musicals.
Yeah,
Which is unfortunate because there are a lot of great plays that get done, but because they're not musicals, they're not going to get the same amount of attention, unfortunately.
yeah, and like I just mentioned the piano lesson. Piano lesson stars not only Samuel L. Jackson but also John David Washington, and they are two big Hollywood actors on Broadway performing probably like 14 weeks or 16 weeks depending on whatever the scheduling it is. And if this was a more say if this didn't have like a say a Samuel L. Jackson or John David Washington, it obviously wouldn't be.
It probably wouldn't have even gotten onto Broadway, to be honest.
I mean, it would have gotten on Broadway,
Like,
but it wouldn't be like on like the like on Broadway. Probably been like off Broadway. I mean, off Broadway. Like,
well, that's what I'm saying. It wouldn't be
yeah,
considered a Broadway show. Like agreeing with what you're saying, it'd just be like off
yeah,
Broadway or off Broadway. Like
yeah.
they wouldn't get the big Broadway theater if they didn't have the star.
Oh yeah. So
But not saying it's not it's bad to like have stars, these big name stars in your shows, because
yeah.
one, that does bring people in, but also they have talent and they want to do stage, so of course that give them a chance to like really show what they can do on stage, because
And
but yeah.
yeah. And speaking of talent on Broadway, which leads to our next story. So I don't know who have obviously people who obviously listen to this podcast and who obviously would go to Broadway shows or go to see performing arts shows in general. You know that during intermission or before the show, they have concessions. And concession stands on Broadway, it was difficult because of COVID, because obviously they didn't sell that much. They only sold like maybe bottled waters or water in general. But following the pandemic, like really, I wouldn't say slowing down or at least not having a big enough impact that it is on Broadway, they brought back liquor or at least wine, which leads us to our next story, which is essentially death of the salesman actor Wendell Pierce, who is a well-known television actor and theater actor, practically had to salvage a intermission right before Act Two, but right before Act Two of Death of a Salesman, when an audience member was quote unquote disruptive to a point where the show had to be stopped for her to be escorted out of the building. Now, this shows you how well Wendell Pierce is as not only as an actor, but also as a person, because he literally took the time and effort to not only get this woman out of the building, but also try to calm this woman while still being on stage and still trying to get back in the character of I forgot the character's name, but still being to get back in the character. Because once you're done with intermission, it's like, okay, it's in like you're done half the play first, and now just relax for like 15 minutes or so. And then once you're back on stage, it's like you gotta go right back into that whole mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's this woman literally disrupting the whole play and the whole process, and here's these people trying to get her out. So Wendell basically had to go and break character in order to not only save the show from being disrupted, but also just to get this woman out of the thing. So it does go like it brings to mind when I have to be in character on stage or something like that. And then there is this like disruption of a person, like say maybe a few a few rows ahead of me, right? And I can see it in the thing, and I have to like stop and bring attention, all that stuff. You know, but in true fashion, he really does like he doesn't like scream and yell at her. He listens to her side and makes sure to like understand why this woman was like so agitated or so whatnot. And it it definitely just shows you how well he handled it, because this like he literally was just like, I understand everything, and he just remains so calm and cool, and he's just like, I understand everything, just relax and all that stuff. But we can't go back to the show until one, you got to be out of this place.
Mhm.
And according to a post shared on Reddit, obviously from firsthand experience, this is what happened with this woman in the first place. Woman was rustling through her bag throughout the first act and responding loudly to the actors on stage. The same person claimed that the woman would not leave without getting her money back. So I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce arranged for someone to grab some cash to get this woman to go about her way. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where when you're on Broadway, right, and you had to deal with an unwilling person or persons that are doing that, it it does hurt the momentum of the show, especially if it's like a great first act. Because
Mhm.
once you go into the second act, it's just like you're trying to keep that momentum going back, and then suddenly it's you gotta deal with a disruption or something like that, and then suddenly it's like, all right, I gotta take a couple of seconds here to readjust while this person is like screaming and yelling or something like that. So
Mhm.
from my experience or from my personal opinion, when there is a disruption and the actors on stage really don't like yell or scream or something like that, because I mean, let's face it, people watching a Broadway show, they can't get disrupted. Um,
Mhm.
there's been famous instances of people trying to like sneak their phones and taking a picture on the thing, and then the actors like literally calling out the audience member for saying, "I see you with the phone," and then going straight back into the character like it's just nothing. But
Mhm.
coming back from intermission, right? It's much more. I feel like it's a much more of a shift in energy because you got to essentially you're not only coming back from break, you also have to go back into the same mindset as you were back in essentially the end of the first act.
Mhm.
And then you have this person like screaming and yelling and all that stuff. And then as you're about to go back into character, you have to go and deal with this.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do agree that he handled that situation perfectly because you have to be very reasonable with someone who was like that on stage rather than trying to uh instigate the problem. There we go.
Mhm. Yeah. And, like, oh, people, can we not go just a couple of hours and just not have a drink and just watch something and just enjoy it? Like,
Impossible, Hayden.
I swear, it baffles me so much why like you have to serve alcohol at a show because stuff like this happens. Also, like, those Broadway theaters can already be uncomfortable enough on their own to begin with.
Yeah.
Like you're already packed in there like a sardine. You got nowhere to even put your drink aside from the ground. That's hoping you don't accidentally knock it over because you barely have any leg room to begin with, and end up spilling it if you're not careful. Like the whole setup of that is just ridiculous. And also, let's be honest, anyone's going to see a Broadway show, odds are you might have already had a drink before you went to see a show to begin with.
Oh
Or
yes.
or honestly, like uh, just people, do yourself a favor. You can go a couple hours of your life without having to have a drink and just sit in a chair and watch actors perform in a Broadway show for a couple hours. Like that shouldn't be too much to ask for.
You know, it's
Because
that
that's because from everything I heard, that seems to be the case.
yes, it really does show you is like, and I know from experience, dealing with uh people who are obviously a little drunk or coming in, with their sippy cups full of wine and all that stuff, and then acting like a fool before the show either begins or they're going right into their like well yeah either acting like a fool because they're a little tipsy or rummaging through their pocketbook or whatnot and looking for their phone and that's another thing when you're in a theater, please be mindful. Please be courteous
Mhm.
to people who are on stage
Just be
because we don't want.
respectful.
Yeah, we don't
Just
want
like
to be on.
just be respectful. That shouldn't be too much to ask for.
Yes, you know, an actor on stage should not hear a phone call going do 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 do, and then because one,
Like don't be Andy from The Office when he took his phone with him on stage and then disrupted the whole show because he didn't turn it off.
I like how you had to point out an Office reference when you had the Office background. So it's like one per episode. I gotta fit in
Yep.
a
It's
Office
like
reference.
Spider-Man from Family Guy. Everybody gets one.
Like every episode now is like, I gotta figure out an Office reference. Crap. Oh wait, Broadway. Okay. Disruptions. Oh, I got one. I got the perfect one.
Yep. Literally the perfect one.
All right. But yeah, only one, Hayden. Only one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
like, but yeah, when you're on stage, right, and you got to deal with a phone call going off. Because I've been on stage and I would just hear like a phone call going off, and I don't know, for some reason that would also allow some ammunition for me to actually go on stage and actually, if I had to be angry, that's the anger I'm actually pointing out to. It's like I'm not angry at you. I'm just angry at the fucking person.
It's like you're supposed to deliver this angry monologue at the character, but then you just look for that person whose cell phone rang and you're just doing it right at them the whole time.
Yes. Instead, it's like you're like instead of the blocking of you being angry at this person, your character like literally just turns to the audience and just stares directly at that one person for like for 1 2 minutes or whatever it is, and then just sort of like what I'm saying.
And it's like, no, I don't think I do. You kind of left me there for a minute.
But yeah, it does show you though. In all seriousness, folks, it does show you like the type of like I guess training or yeah, the type of training other actors do because or the type of reactions the other actors do. Some actors are far better into handling that, like Mr. Pierce. Or then there would be like actors who are on stage and then literally hear a phone and then just immediately just snap their friggin' like literally just snap on stage and just like, bring the house lights up and all that stuff. Whose fucking phone is that and all that stuff? It's like it's it's interesting to watch. And I've been at shows, I've been ushering shows for a while now, and when a phone call goes off and you're supposed to silence your phone, you could tell when an actor's on stage loathing that sound as they were trying to do that scene. And then afterwards you could hear from like maybe the from backstage or something like how they were like very pissed off about that thing. But if you want to drink in the comfort of your own home. And speaking of home, what is home without streaming services? Ah, a nice little segue. I'm doing better with segues now.
I'm noticing.
So Netflix, so there's a few streaming services to talk about first. Obviously Netflix for one hand. Uh, Unfortunately, the TV actually, come to think about it, I think, yeah, come to think about it, the television show Inside Job was canceled after one season, even though Netflix said they were going to do 2 seasons. I mean, they just ordered the next season of the cartoon.
Hmm.
But this has been noticeable for Netflix around for a while now because if you're a
It's basically just like it's the common pattern with Netflix where it's like they have a show go for a couple seasons or even just
yeah,
one season and people like it, people tune in to watch it, but then all of a sudden Netflix decides, nah, we're canceling it. Why? We clearly don't know.
yes, but there's
And
much more.
and speaking of not knowing, apparently Brian Zoom doesn't know what to do.
Okay, yeah, okay. I've been having problems with my Zoom, so every now and then, if I'm on the computer and I'm looking at, like, say, a uh something on online or something like that, and I'm on Zoom and I happen to be talking to somebody, you might see a little Max Headroom thing happening with me, or a Matrix thing. So
You know how we can fix this internet? Well, we're gonna have to raise some prices here to the
yeah.
two people who don't pay us anything.
But yeah, okay, so there's actually two animated shows actually just got canceled. So one was Inside Job. So if anybody who hasn't watched Inside Job, the as I was about to say what Inside Job is, my Zoom decides to act up on it again. So
Now
long
you're
story
stuck with
short,
my face for a while.
so Inside Job is basically about the about people who work inside the deep state and basically could control America and all that stuff. And it's basically like a work com version of, hey, imagine you're working for the government, but it's inside the government. So you're the ones who actually controls everything. So it's like there's the main character is named Ridley, who is like this very strung out scientist whose father's like this most like conspiracy theorist type of person who used to work for, I mean, who used to run the company that she works for. Her coworker is a man who is literally a dolphin who basically is, I think the joke is that he used to be a man who basically got genetically engineered into a dolphin. So now he has basically a dolphin body, but his own voice and memories and whatnot. Uh, yeah, it's a very screwy show, and the people behind this show actually did Gravity Falls. So you can understand where a lot of this comedy comes from now.
Not just
Uh,
Gravity Falls, but also had people from BoJack Horseman as well.
oh yes,
So
and
again, Netflix, like people from two successful shows of yours, and
yes,
so maybe just give your show give a show a chance before you just start canceling.
oh yes. So it just goes to show you that if you're an animation show on Netflix that hasn't really been hit big, or maybe in the case of,
Yeah, it's like for Netflix, you either have to hit it big in that first season for your animated show, or it seems like they're not going to care about it as much.
yeah, like,
Because BoJack Horseman hit really big on that first season, and
yes,
then boom, we got 6 seasons of that ultimately, and then Gravity
yes.
Falls. We got like I think how many seasons of Gravity Falls were there? I always forget this one.
I think there was like maybe three, and but this is, of course, this is a Disney show, by the way. So Gravity Falls is a Disney show, so that's like way more different. And Disney shows happen.
Wait a minute. I'm thinking of a different show altogether. Never mind.
Okay,
Yeah, I was thinking of
but
another show that was on Netflix, but yeah, that's a vastly different show.
but yeah, this other show called, what was it? Dead End Paranormal Park, canceled by Netflix after two seasons. So at least they got at least 2 seasons worth of a story.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the weird thing is I didn't even hear about this show until just yesterday. So and it's weird because a lot of these shows like Gravity Falls, um, Steven Universe, basically shows that just came out like maybe in the like early 2010s to say to at least 2015 or so. Like their creators have gone on to like more shows that would be in like streaming sites like Netflix or Amazon Prime, whatnot. But in the end, I think for Netflix, for their justification is that animation costs money, and why should we put money into this product if no one is really watching this show in the first place? And even though if it has a devoted fan base, right, it still would not counter the product they were seeing as like, okay, even though this has a devoted fan base, this is still costing us a lot of money to produce, but also distribute as well. You know, and yet and yet they happen to also be doing yet another season of Big Mouth. So yes. Uh yeah, and a lot of people have been like blaming that show as well because one uh uh Velma, which just premiered on HBO Max, who we'll get to in a couple of seconds, uh has been described as basically HBO Max doing their version of Big Mouth, which is
Mhm.
basically a very raunchy teenage focused type of thing. And I think that's the problem is that a lot of these shows are more geared towards, say, teenagers, while shows like, say, Inside Job are more geared towards, I say, people who have grown up with the people, people who grew up, like, say, 10 years ago, watching, say, something like Gravity Falls or Steven Universe, and then watching and loving the show and wanting to go and support the creators of that show into a new show. And then figuring out, oh, the people who love this show can watch our show and still love and still love it.
Mhm.
And I think it all goes to show you that if you're a animation show on Netflix and you haven't, and like we just said, if you haven't scored big, like big ratings or something like that, you kind of like shit out of luck.
Mhm.
And that's a sad state is that a lot of these shows will be like, oh, it'll air part one and then air part two at a later date, which basically says, oh, hey, we don't want to put the entire season on hand. So the first half of the season will be part one, and the second half of of that season will be part two, and then part three will be essentially be like season two, part one, or something like that. As opposed to just saying, hey, here's season one, all in good fun. Hey, that rhymed. And as opposed to really allowing people to actually enjoy this show, and it definitely feels like,
Well, I think that's part of the reason why Netflix
yeah,
is doing so bad too, because like that model of putting all the content of that one season or of a season out at once, because then people are going to be so quick to binge it. Then once they binge it, they're going to forget about it after a couple of days.
and you could say,
Whereas like when you get a show where it's like a week after week after week,
yeah,
you know, you have to actively remember to watch it because and that will show how really invested you are in the show. That if
yeah.
you're tuning back in week after week to watch it.
And from what I've been hearing too, is like Netflix is thinking about doing the whole week to week basics on some of these shows, but I think they feel like it's much more so useful to do the whole let's just cram this entire season out and then put it out in the first place so people could have it more talk, so it's like more water cooler thing. But they started doing the week by week thing with Stranger Things when the first like it would be like Stranger Things episode, I think, what was it? The newest season was like episode 1 to 3 would be released, and then 4, 5, and 6, and then 7 and 8, which were the last two episodes, came out after July 4th. So it definitely feels like they're trying to do these new models of having a show come out like either weekly, right, or having two episodes come out weekly, or just do the same model of have an entire show just be, shot out in like
Mhm.
on the first day and all that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
like I'll watch, I'll binge like a season of Cobra Kai when it first comes out,
yeah,
but because it's right there, it's just so easy.
yeah,
Problem is, I immediately forget about the show after I finish.
yeah. Unless you're on social media and you scrolling through like
Well,
say,
even then, the show isn't really like it's not still actively in my memory. Like say The Boys
yeah,
or Andor, for
yeah.
examples.
And
But anyway, yeah, it's definitely a good thing if Netflix can start adopting that kind of model because I think that is one of the things they can do to try and salvage their like financial situation.
yeah, in financial situations they could start like maybe lowering some prices. But
Mhm.
speaking of prices, HBO Max, see what I mean? I told you I'd be back with HBO Max in a couple of seconds. So it in on the cusp of The Last of Us part. I was about to say, oh my God.
God.
The
I mean,
Last of Us
honestly,
Part One, the
maybe it
TV.
is because
No, no, no. From what I've been hearing, actually, they've been trying to do more of an expansion of the story. Actually,
if by
actually,
expansion of the story, do they mean a way to retcon it so they can say Last of Us 2, the game is somehow better?
no, no. It's actually more along the lines of backstory.
Hmm.
So, like, they want to uh, okay. Quick thing. Neil Druckmann has said he wanted to do more backstory of Elle's mother. I mean, Ellie's mother. Uh, and I know they added more backstory with the Fireflies, which feels like so one noted in the first game because they're just kind of like there. So it'll be
Hmm.
interesting to watch, like in compare and contrast, like what they got right with the TV show and what they got and what they're updating with the TV show as well, because you could tell it's like even like I would love to know more about the Fireflies other than oh hey they just kind of like appeared right during the apocalypse. I mean like some years after the apocalypse, like without no explanation. You know,
And fingers crossed they don't get the Reva treatment where they just put in essentially one note characters just because and not do anything really interesting or engaging with them.
well, I will say this though with the Last of Us part. Why am I saying part one? Gee, this is what happens when they decided
Well,
to
this.
re-release. This is what happens when they re-release the first game as The Last of Us Part One,
Mhm.
as opposed to just saying The Last of Us Remastered, even though there is a game called The Last of Us Remastered on PS4, which is how I got in the game in the first place. But anyway, back to the matter at hand. So, right on the cusp of The Last of Us, the TV show coming out, Warner Brothers Discovery decided to announce the pay raise by $1 of the HBO Max subscription for the first time. So, if you're a new user on the ad-free plan, you would have to pay $16 a month as opposed to I think what was it, 14.99 a month.
Mhm.
So existing subscribers who are obviously still paying $15 a month will have to go an extra month in the next billing cycle, which will not be until February the 11th. So basically, until February the 11th, you're still paying $15.
Mhm.
Well, $15 and whatever tax it comes out. But that's another thing. Like, even though you're paying X amount per month, you're still paying taxes and whatnot. So, which is annoying to say the least. But yeah, and I think this is also interesting because they also did this right before I believe House of Dragon as well, where right before House of the Dragon came out, they did a little increase in terms of their like I guess the the ad the ad sponsored thing where you watch an ad and then you just watch the show and whatnot, and it's like but this is the ad free thing, so you're basically paying HBO Max the same amount if you wanted to have HBO the channels on the HBO channels on the cable channel because that's as much as close as it is in order to actually pay HBO for that thing. And I think it's also a I think it's also a response to them cutting costs as well because HBO Max most recently has been cutting courses into not only their own shows, right? Like Westworld, a show that was on HBO on like HBO itself was like suddenly just taken off HBO as well as a slew of other shows. Movies as well, they just un well, I think well, not un, but they just took off like last year alone, they took off at least several HBO Max original movies for unknown reasons. Although people have been saying these movies will be popping up at a more later date for like essentially free TV services like Freebie, Pluto TV.
Okay.
So like those type of streaming
Hmm.
things. So they would so that instead of paying uh the the viewing rights for people to keep it on HBO Max, they'll just shift it over to these free like free TV sites like Freevee or Pluto TV or probably like Tubi or something like that. And
Hmm.
then they'll probably be getting the money from all those ads because I was like, oh, you want to watch so it's like, oh, you want to see I'll just let's just say for the sake of our argument, they decided to take off uh
Godzilla versus King Kong.
yeah, versus King Kong, right? Or Mortal Kombat, right? Both
Hmm.
movies were both, HBO Max exclusives until the time being. A month or two later, both movies come up on, say, Freevee or Pluto TV, where you can watch whenever you want, but you would also have to watch it with ads.
Hmm.
So at any given point, Godzilla or King Kong or Scorpion is about to impale someone with his harpoon thing, and then someone's like, cut to the ad instead of watching it, through and through. So I think in a way, the reason why they're doing a little pay raise is because they want to not only keep as many subscribers as they can, especially with what's been happening with HBO Max as a whole, but also
And just Warner Brothers in general too.
yeah, and Warner Bros. In general. Well, but you know who's having a good, good time with streaming services? Paramount Plus. Damn, I'm hot. I am rolling with the segues.
Nice.
So so Paramount Plus decided to announce that a Dungeons and Dragons series is being announced by Paramount Plus, along with E1, the production company that did the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. But with the good, there's also the bad. So I'll save the good in a couple seconds. But the bad is that Dungeons and Dragons had not the best of weeks last week. Uh, I am what they call a newbie, so I can't really describe what's happening. But Hayden, he has dabbled in Dungeons and Dragons before, so he knows the type of stuff he has to talk about. So Hayden, take it away.
Yes, I know a little of the Dungeons and Dragons. Also, sorry, my computer's lagging. Apparently, this is what happens when I try to charge my laptop and do Zoom at the same time. Thanks, technology. But anyway, I
Hayden
digress.
glitching out.
True. So anyway, what's been happening with Dungeons and Dragons lately is like there's this company called Wizards of the Coast, and they essentially have a lot of control over the Dungeons and Dragons content, so to say. And if you're someone who watches, streamers who do Dungeons and Dragons stuff, like one of the popular ones, Critical Role, like they do create a lot of their content, but they also have to get it, licensed with, the official D&D, stuff and all that. Because like, so that way if people want to use their essentially their content for like, their own homebrew campaign, so to say,
Yeah,
then, like then you can have access to be able to do that. If I remember right, how the story goes. If I think sorry, it's been a while since I read the story, so
yeah, but
it's not as fresh in my memory at the moment, unfortunately. But like basically, it's that licensing thing that Wizards of the Coast is just like essentially the way they're going about it. It would essentially destroy making homebrew content,
yeah.
and yeah.
And the fun thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that you could basically create your own campaign and have like 3 hours of fun or 4 hours of fun, and just be like, no, not worrying about life and stuff. And then suddenly it's like, oh, this thing that you were streaming or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of like want to have a piece of it now. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but
Yeah,
as of right
and
now,
really, what it's just nothing more than a greedy company just wanting to profit off of other people's creativity and fun.
yeah. But as much as and then they decided to say, okay, we revert. And from what I've been hearing, they reversed the decision on that. Even thinking about doing that thing because they were like, okay,
Thank God.
we'll not exactly do that, or we'll do that, but we'll do that in a more, one that is successful to both parties. Parties.
Yeah, successful, quote unquote.
Successful. But like I said, out of the bad comes the good. So Paramount Plus has announced a 8 episode straight to order Dungeons and Dragons TV series that is a live action TV series coming off the heels of a Dungeons and Dragons movie that they have just announced, that's been put into production, is already coming out at the end of March. Honor Among Thieves. It has yet to have like a cast announcement and whatnot, but they do have like a director who is set to not only write the pilot but also direct the first pilot. I mean, direct it as well. Roshan Marshall Thurber, who has directed such films as Red Notice, I believe a couple other rock movies. If you've seen his work, he knows how to bring in the action. So if you are watching Dungeons and Dragons movie, or I mean TV media like that, it is definitely one of those things that he knows how to bring the action and knows how to have fun at the same time. So, and I think that's another thing is like they're looking for someone who could actually bring the fun and excitement into his TV show. So they probably was like, hey, this guy has done a few rock movies, and the rock movies are essentially popcorn movies at best. So it's like you don't have to worry about the plot and everything. So it's like, why is the rock having to scale a skyscraper that's on fire? That's not important. Okay,
And while he has a prosthetic leg too.
well, actually, that's because his character was a bomb expert, and a bomb happens to take away his leg. So
No, but I'm just adding to that. He has to
oh,
scale
okay.
a skyscraper while he
Well,
also has a prosthetic leg, which also can weaken him too, because that's something someone who's fighting him can take advantage of.
yeah, and it's like another thing is like why is The Rock training a gorilla who happens to grow like 4 times its size and start rampaging throughout the city? It's not important. It's just a movie.
Also, fun fact about that one. So when he does the sign language for like telling the gorilla his name, he actually does the sign language for the word rock. Essentially.
And they say The Rock has an ego problem. No, but in all
Yeah, he
seriousness,
spent so I mean, yeah, he spent so long just to make Black Adam happen.
well, I have theories about Black Adam why it bombed, but again, it had to do with coming out at the end of October instead of it coming out like at right after either Comic-Con or at least a few weeks after Comic-Con. Like what you said
Yeah,
before about okay. Anyway,
no, it's good. Sorry. Thank you, technology, for being weird to us.
yes, but in all seriousness, folks, they couldn't get another guy to actually do it because Russian's films are very fun to watch. So I can't wait to actually see what he could do on a more television budget. And from what I'm reading in this article, uh, Dungeons and Dragons will be joining Halo as like sort of like their second show based off of a video game property. So hopefully it will be better than the show Halo because I've heard Halo is just like, uh, I just mentioned Halo. You're just like, Christ.
You weren't there. You weren't in the trenches. No,
No,
like yeah, that's something that okay, first off, D&D is not a video game.
yes,
They made into one later, but it's
a
basically
game.
just a role-playing game. Like it's basically just a board game. Yeah, you can play it over the computer with friends and stuff, but like I wouldn't qualify it as a video game the same way that
Well,
like Halo is.
for the most part,
Also, by the way, the like we know what they did with Halo, and
yes.
the fact that this guy is going to be directing the pilot of this Dungeons and Dragons TV show. Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about how this is going to turn out.
No,
Like, if
but
they can somehow find a way to make this show be like an actual Dungeons and Dragons campaign where you have a serious story, but your characters spend a lot of like they spend a whole episode doing a ridiculous subplot that doesn't actually mean anything because the players in as you would in real life. Oh, hi, Sophie.
Sophie, the star, decided to go and ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
like this. Like you just like you're playing your campaign, all of a sudden you come across a cute cat, and then you just follow the cat around. Like that, or yeah.
No, but
Anyway, like I don't have a lot of faith in this TV show based on what you told me. The fact because like we know what they've done with Halo, and given this director, I just don't
but
see that working for as well as people think, or I guess as well as the people producing the show think it would work for a Dungeons and Dragons
that
show.
is true. But I will say this though, Paramount Plus has been good in coming out with good content over the past uh I wouldn't say several years, but the past couple of years since its first being announced and first coming out with shows that weren't like Star Trek and stuff like that too. It's like nowadays they know how to like I'm sorry, it's just Sophie just like kind of like there still.
Yeah,
I know,
she just
Sophie.
wants attention.
I
She
know.
just wants some love and attention. I get it. I get it, Sophie.
Hopefully by the towards like when I'm uploading this on YouTube, that'll be a good thumbnail.
Oh God, yeah, that'd be perfect.
That, well, especially when we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and essentially we get just sidetracked by an actual cat. So
Yeah.
no, but in all seriousness, now what I am seeing now is Paramount Plus taking a risk in terms of their own products and content and wanting to do more than just like a rehashing of other TV shows and whatnot. And this article even says this series is has tipped to be the studio's largest TV projects ever, potentially launching a Dungeons and Dragons universe spanning multiple scripted and unscripted shows.
Hmm.
So when I see unscripted, I hope they mean not like at a reality show of just like saying, hey, uh like a Dungeons or Dragons reality show. Although that would be interesting to see like actual people having to do like almost like a Dungeons and Dragons game show and then figuring out, okay, so there's like a little dungeon master who's telling you what to do, and you as the
Hmm.
four people having to uh figure out how to navigate this dungeon or or face this dragon. I don't know because
Hmm.
I never played a game, so I don't know what it's like.
Okay, dude, I'm gonna send you some funny Dungeons and Dragons campaigns to watch,
Yes,
just
I
to
know.
kind of give you an idea of how they kind of go sometimes.
Yes. But in all seriousness, folks, it it really goes to show you how much faith uh they have in the new movie coming out if they already have ordered a television pilot based off of the movie. And speaking of movie, and a good way to end this episode, I wanted to not only showcase the movies that are coming out, but also some of the movies that I know of. I just want to have Hayden's like genuine reaction to some of these movies because you know I'm pretty sure he watches movies, TV shows, whatnot. But there are some movies that I believe he probably doesn't realize are coming out that maybe show uh that may be like that I just want to see his genuine reaction to some of these movies. So
But like, well, I'm not a hermit.
so obviously with January is like one of those type of months that are like it's been known to be like the month where movies go to die because if it's like a movie that the studio has no faith in, they just shifted this January and just go, okay, this is gonna happen in some like second week in January, okay, third week, okay. Oh, but yeah, just put it at the first week of January. No one really goes to movies after New Year's Eve or something like that. But so last week there was two movies that just came out. Megan, a movie about a killer robot. Well, I wouldn't say a killer robot, but a movie about a android helping babysitter. It's hard to describe what Megan is because it's basically a
It's like a robot doll that her sole designation is to protect this woman's daughter, I think it was.
yes. It's
But
basically
in the
a
in the process, it goes too
game
far.
sentence like any other like other. It's like
No, literally, you know what this is? It's this. There's this Disney Channel movie where this guy created essentially a robot house or a
oh,
security
Smart
system for
House.
his house. Smart house, yeah. It's essentially smart house, but not as
It's high tech,
yeah.
but I am hoping to go see Megan tomorrow. My friends who are horror fans, they loved it. And the movie itself did pretty well, enough to actually almost dethrone Avatar: The Way of the Water. So,
Hmm.
so it goes to show you how well a movie like that has a staying power. Another movie that came out last week, although it was a limited release, was The Old Way, which was basically Nicolas Cage as a gunman who stars as a vengeful gunman looking to avenge his wife in the Old West.
Hmm.
Although it was kind of like notable as being also one of the movies that uh happened to be part of the same armorer that was part of the
Yeah,
Rush.
that
Yeah. So it has a very uh distinctness like, oh, cool, a Nicolas Cage Western. And the movie happens to be uh part of the same armorer who happened to be part of the Rush shooting. So yeah. But coming out this week, the week of Friday the 13th, we have Plane, which is basically, hey, Gerard Butler is a airplane pilot, and he happens to be carrying a passenger played by Mike Coulter, aka Luke Cage, and they crash land in the Philippines, and they have to fight to survive. I mean, one, you got me with Gerard Butler as a airplane pilot. You got Mike Coulter too, but honestly, Gerard Butler playing whatever role, he's a huge selling point. Hey, Gerard Butler is a man looking for his wife. You got me there. You know?
honestly, what I think would have been really kind of perfect for that movie, just for the fun of it, is if they actually could have found a way to talk to Disney, be like, "Hey, look, you haven't used this Luke Cage character in a while, and we got the actor playing him, and his character did get arrested at one point in the in the story. So could we maybe borrow him and just say, this is Luke Cage for a while, just have a little fun with him, and then you can have him back."
So I
Like,
can imagine that actually happened.
sadly, that of course did not happen, but imagine how fun it would have been if it did.
Yes. Another movie that came out this weekend was House Party, the reboot or reimagining of the 1990s comedy House Party, where instead of it being a regular house party, it's about a couple of a couple of teenagers who happen to have their
Yeah, they
house
somehow get
party,
access to LeBron James's home.
James's house, mansion. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh wait, apparently they are okay. I'm not okay. I was wrong. They are not teenagers. They are young, expiring young club promoters who work as house cleaners who happen to clean the house of LeBron James. So there you go.
it'd be a very different movie if they actually were like they have expiration dates or something. Okay, that changes the context of this comedy.
Yes. Then there is a Peacock original horror movie coming that came out on, well, obviously Peacock, called Sick, which is Kevin Williams's a new movie by Kevin Williamson, who is the screenwriter of Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Following, this little TV show that probably was successful called Dawson's Creek. I don't know. I don't watch TV. Um, but it's actually a movie that's based in a like the early days of the COVID pandemic. So I'm actually, and it's about basically how someone's being stalked in their own like private quarantine type of a cabin. So
Hmm.
Like I'm noticing that with there are like more movies coming out now that has been like it's been a couple of years since COVID, and now there's a couple of movies that are coming out about the height of COVID and being like around that little like area of COVID and whatnot.
Mhm.
We had, and then going into this the third week of January, we have Missing, which is sort of like the pseudo sequel to Searching.
Hmm.
So instead of a father looking for his daughter, it is now a daughter looking for her mother, who apparently has may or may not have been kidnapped in I think Brazil or somewhere around that area. I forgot where.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
and speaking of sequels, released in the same week. I'm sorry, not about Colombia. Okay, and released on the same week is The Son, which is the sequel to The Father, starring Anthony Hopkins.
Oh,
And
you mean like how sequels work in real life?
yes, actually, what I've learned about that one, the father, the son are actually plays, a trilogy of plays, or among a trilogy of plays. And
They better
they're
not name the next one Holy Spirit, I swear.
no, the third one is actually called what is the third one called? Height or something?
Grandson?
No, it's I think it goes like the father, the son, and then there's a third one, but I don't know what it's called. There's it'll come back to me. Probably at a
Hmm.
later date, like when I'm talking about the son. But basically,
Father, son, you're adopted. That's the third one. You're adopted.
but apparently it's more along the lines of the son played by Hugh Jackman. So basically,
Hmm.
Hugh Jackman is playing Anthony Hopkins' son, or the very least among that like lineage of that thing. Uh, A24 has a new movie coming out. It's a coming of age drama starring that is written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg in his directorial debut.
Huh.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So I actually didn't realize that until I was just as and it's actually based off of something that he actually wrote too. It's
Oh.
actually based on an audio drama of the same name.
Hmm.
So Jesse Eisenberg becoming a successful director is something I did not have in my 2020. I mean, not successful director, but becoming a director in his own right is something I did not see happening in 2023.
Hmm.
And I know he's like I know he's a, like, I know he wrote things, especially as a playwright and stuff like that too. But I'm like, him doing a uh like a full-on theatrical film based on his own works, like that's really impressive because that's really hard to do, especially if you're a first-time director too.
Yeah,
Uh,
we got to remake the bingo cards for 2023
yes, and
to
then
now include Jesse Eisenberg becoming a director.
yes, and then towards the end of the year, I mean, towards the end of the year, towards the end of January, we have basically like like obviously the movies that are like kind of like shifted in the dump month thing because well, one, I wouldn't say this is a dump month movie, but I'm pretty sure if Paramount decided to release this in theaters, it probably would have had a good chance, which is basically Teen Wolf, the movie based off the TV show Teen Wolf, and it's it reunited most of the original cast. Obviously, they couldn't get like certain actors because they probably didn't want to do it, or it just wasn't in their schedule. But but
I started getting into that show and I'm surprisingly into it.
I know, right? It
It's
has like
like
one.
when I first heard about the show, I'm like, Teen Wolf, it's MTV, eh. But then I'm watching, I'm like, I'm actually engaged in this. I
Yes,
did not expect this.
and you'd be surprised like what other actors popped up on that show. Like Superman, like one of the Superman is actually the
Oh,
one of
he's
the
fantastic. I think he's better in this than as Superman.
well, it's because and as Superman you have to be it's hard to play Superman, and honestly, if you're
But
playing a
also they just don't give him good material for Superman in the
okay,
first
that's true.
place.
That's true. But then there is going into the 27th of January. Uh, there is a movie called Distant, which stars Zachary Quinto. Uh, According to this, it's basically a this is an interesting one. So it's about a space. It's about an asteroid miner named Andy who gets stuck crash landing on a animal planet and having to contend with his AI survival suit, which is basically Quinto. He's basically the voice of his survival suit. Losing oxygen, he connects with his fellow crewmate Naomi via radio, who is trapped inside her own escape pod, leading to go and rescue her and to go all that. So basically, you have a survival movie set in space where you have two factors of an annoying AI system losing oxygen, and you have your other crewmate being probably miles away, so you have a time factor there. I'm like, okay, you know what? But I thought it'd be like one of those like one note movies where it's like, oh, we gotta survive on another planet and stuff like that. But no, they actually started out with that one. And Netflix comes back around with basically a remake of. I wouldn't say it's a remake, but it's a inspirational remake of Who's Coming to Dinner called You People, starring Jonah Hill, Eddie Murphy, uh, and Nia Long, Mike Epps, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and David Duchovny. As it's basically like a Matt, like I have problems with Netflix original movies nowadays, and I like that Eddie Murphy has found a niche into working at Netflix, right? But you could tell even by watching the trailer, he's just there for like a good paycheck.
Mhm.
Meanwhile,
I
it's
mean,
basically
you're on Netflix movie. Of course, you're just there for a paycheck. Sorry,
and
Netflix, but
and you could tell this is Jonah Hill's product too, because not only did he co-wrote it, but also you could tell there's like the cringe. I wouldn't say cringe comedy, but there's like the uncomfortable type of cringe comedy where it's like
mm,
he
that the
leans
kind
into
that only Jonah Hill can really do.
yeah. And props to him that actually, still making that. Uh Amazon Studios has a movie coming out calling Shotgun Wedding, starring Jennifer Lopez and Josh Duhamel and Lenny Kravitz
Mm.
and Jennifer Coolidge, who just came off a win with her global Golden Globes. So there's that.
And there's not a shotgun in this movie. I want a refund.
Mhm. Well, actually, that is the poster. Poster is Jennifer Lopez holding a shotgun. So they are it is they are what's that term? They aren't lying when they says this movie is called A Shotgun Wedding. And at the end of the month, there is a Bob Odenkirk movie about uh, another movie that's set in the pandemic about the early days of the pandemic called Life Upside Down, where he basically plays an art house gallery owner who is also interconnected with other people in his life. I think through his art house. I mean art house galleries. I know it's usually the same thing, but art gallery. So I hope that's a very good movie because I rarely see Bob Odenkirk doing movies as a lead character. I mean, as a lead actor. So I think after Better Call Saul is like now there's more products that have. There's got to be like a lot more products. I mean, a lot more projects that are now coming out now. Of course, he has a new AMC show coming out. I think either this year or either sometime early this year or later this year called Lucky Luke. So
Yeah.
all right. And going into February, and I'm only doing January and February, by the way. I ain't going into because February,
Maybe we should leave February for another day.
yeah, because February has a lot of things. We got Cocaine Bear, we got the Winnie the Pooh movie. Uh, I mean the Winnie the Pooh horror movie. Uh,
Are you sure that's not the same thing?
nope, nope. It is definitely a different movie.
February, month of
And
the bear.
Next time we'll showcase what February has to offer other than Ant
Other than
Man.
killing bears.
Yes, one hopped up on cocaine and one hopped on honey.
Which is worse? I say it's the honey.
Actually, I won't. I won't joke about that. Apparently, that's actually one of the reasons why Winnie the Pooh went on a rampage along with Piglet, is because apparently when Christopher Robin grew up, uh, he just like everything around him just like grew depressing and killed friggin' who's it called? Oh, actually, it may have been Piglet. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Uh,
Well,
so
there goes a
yes,
joke I was gonna do. That
yes,
probably would just kill the mood.
yes. So yes, come back next time where we actually talk about the February movies and learned about why February has a month that is basically about will a movie called Cocaine Bear actually be a successful box office juggernaut when the movie that comes out the next week would be a movie about a guy who shrinks and goes big and fights an interdimensional god being called Kang. Eh. Until next time, I am Brian M. Davis. I hope you had a very good episode. Listen to us ramble on about life and stuff that's happening in the world of Broadway theater. Is interested in stuff, and that is why it is called Downstage, because who how else I got here about all this stuff? Yeah, come down stage. Oh my god, that's a
And I'm
horrible thing.
Hayden Lummis, and we hope you have enjoyed this episode.
Yes. Take care, everybody. Please be safe.